Do you struggle with making decisions? Do you notice that when it comes down to it, it's actually very difficult for you to decide and to then commit to your decisions? Because you second guess yourself, you begin to doubt, you begin to seek answers outside yourself, and you ask everyone else for their opinions as to what you should do with your life and the decisions that are before you. If any of this is true for you, then in this video, you're going to learn why that happens and what you can do about it so that you make decisions and so that you know that you're making decisions that are always in alignment with the deepest aspects of you. Now, indecision comes from a false or a faulty conception of yourself fundamentally. Most people struggle with decision making, myself included, or at least I used to, until I discovered what it is I'm about to share with you. They struggle with decision making because they view themselves as this little ego that is trapped in the 6 inches between your 2 ears. If you view yourself fundamentally as this little thinking self, as the ego, then you're going to approach every single decision point in your life from this perspective. And what this is going to lead you to is a strong desire, a strong proclivity to want to control everyone and everything so that you feel in control when you feel out of control. You'll be approaching life fundamentally from the analytical, logical, and sequential left hemisphere of the brain. And although this has a place, you can't solve a problem with the same state of consciousness that created the problem. And this is fundamentally what the ego runs into. It runs into itself. It's kind of like running into one of those, at festivals or carnivals, those house of mirrors, where you walk in and you suddenly begin to see yourself reflected in a dozen or so mirrors all over you, all around you. That is what it's sometimes like for the ego when it begins to rely upon itself for decision-making and for encountering the mystery that is life. We simply can't have all of the information. There's simply no possible way for reality to be fully encapsulated, fully compressed down to a set of thoughts, to a set of thinking patterns. It's simply impossible, nor would you want to. How miserable of a life would that be if you can just kind of rationalize it down, boil it down to this kind of reductionist, materialist perspective where you have all of the parts before your eyes and you can just make these predictable, deterministic choices. It would be incredibly dull and boring, and things just don't work that way. So what is the alternative? How can you not just get better at making decisions, but know that no matter how uncertain the landscape before you appears, how is it that you can know that you're making decisions that are in alignment with you, where you won't actually begin to second guess yourself? In order to convince you further that there is an alternative to this, it's helpful to understand that the neocortex, the studies have been done on this, and the neocortex can roughly, to a first approximation, process 40 bits of information per second. And while that is quite admirable, let's say, when you compare it to the rest of the nervous system, to the rest of the body, fundamentally, the body is processing roughly 11 million bits of information per second. Now, if we were to solely rely on the neocortex or the thinking mind to make our decisions, we would be quite literally tossing the baby out with the bathwater. We simply have access to profoundly a more sophisticated tool, if you will, to assist us in making more sophisticated, more nuanced decisions that if we relied upon it, that if we accessed, could serve us in moving toward a life that is fundamentally more in alignment with our values. So how do we do this? How do we get in touch with the wisdom that is in our bodies to help us in our decision making? Well, the first step is to understand that the thinking mind, the ego, the conscious mind, the neocortex, whatever angle, whatever lens you choose to look at it from, is fundamentally limited. And we really need to rely on the subconscious or the body to guide us in more sophisticated decision making. And this can be, although it might be sophisticated, these decisions don't necessarily need to be big decisions. We can make sophisticated small decisions in our lives. And actually, I encourage that the more we tap into the body for decision making, the more we will begin to realize that it's actually trustworthy and that it is, in fact, guiding us. And we begin to listen to the cues that it gives us. We begin to become familiar with those cues. So when it does come down to making a big decision that requires a sophisticated or nuanced consideration, we know that, number one, the body is reliable because we have evidence of it, and two, we know what the cues of the body are so that we know exactly what to listen to. And the beautiful thing about this is that the body is really integrating information from the 4 levels of knowing that we have access to: the mind, the heart, the body itself, and the spirit. Now, regardless of whether or not you think that spirit is a reality, or whether that word or label resonates for you is not necessary for you to believe or to think or to know. But the point is that there really are different degrees or different ways that we know our experience. And the point is that the body, that all of these levels of knowing funnel down into the body. And so the body really is, a way to think about it is, it's a truth-telling device that is always calibrated, or rather, it's always pointing us toward our right actions that, if we took, would lead us toward a life that is in alignment with our values at the deepest of levels. And the reason we don't listen to it is because we've been socialized and cultured out of listening to our bodies. We're forced to sit down and to listen to boring lectures from teachers who, for the most part, are unengaged and also disconnected from their own bodies for 8 hours a day. And then we're given screens to stare at. So it's no wonder that most of us in today's culture are just fundamentally out of touch with these levels of knowing and with the body itself. So the first thing to realize is that we can make more sophisticated and nuanced decisions when we consider the perspective of the mind, of the thinking mind, but also consider the perspective of the heart, the body, and spirit, which are all being communicated through the sensations and vibrations and felt experience of the body. The second thing is to begin to listen to your body when it comes down to day-to-day decisions and day-to-day activities. For instance, you can think of the next 3 things you'll be doing today or the rest of this week, and sit with each one and feel what it's like to imagine yourself doing those three things. You might begin to notice a sense of relaxation when you think of doing something that you really enjoy. You might notice contractions, sometimes in different areas of the body, when you think of doing something that you actually don't enjoy doing, or being around certain people that you actually don't want to be around, but you are forcing yourself to because of whatever series of limiting beliefs or stories you are rationalizing. Get it? Rationalizing to yourself. The mind really has a tendency of creating rational lies that, if left unexamined, will take you out of alignment. They will take you out of living a life that is in alignment with the deepest aspects of yourself. And although this might seem like a good thing to do because you have responsibilities and so on, fundamentally, and I'm reminded of Dante's Inferno, where Dante finds himself lost in a dark wood at the beginning of the story, and he's been trying to climb this mountain and encounters these ferocious animals and goes back into the forest and eventually finds a guide, Virgil, to help him, or who helps him make his way out of the forest. But Virgil tells him that the way out is actually through hell itself. And this is very much what it's like for us in our own lives. When we're living a life that is out of alignment, we are lost in a dark wood. We are believing all sorts of thoughts that are taking us farther and farther away. We're believing all sorts of stories that take us farther and farther away from a life of alignment. And what happens is that we begin to form relationships in this dark forest, and those relationships are all predicated on being out of alignment. So when we meet someone in the dark forest and we create a relationship with them, they are also going to be out of alignment. So for you to begin to create a life that is actually in alignment with your values, it requires you admitting certain truths to yourselves. And this is metaphorically what Virgil was guiding Dante through, and guiding him through confronting what he didn't want to confront, guiding him through confronting hell itself, and confronting the lies that we've spun and we've believed and fallen into the trap of, is very much a confrontation with hell itself in our lives, because it can really create profound chaos, and it can leave us feeling out of control. It can leave us with existential anxiety. But what's on the other side of that is something that's worth going through hell to get to. And for Dante, that was purgatory and ultimately heaven itself. And the body is the vehicle that contains the step-by-step internal navigation system. It's an internal biological GPS that is always telling you what is right for you and what is not right for you. And it really is only a matter of tuning in and listening to the deepest aspects of you, as they are attempting to guide you in life. And so this is what I invite you to do. Begin to tune into your body. What can help with this are body scans. Tune in and imagine taking certain actions that are coming your way, events, activities, appointments, and notice how your body reacts when you begin to visualize yourself going through these activities, events, and so on. Notice if it feels relaxing and freeing. Notice if it feels constrictive or restrictive. And also notice where those sensations, those contractions arise in your body, so that you begin to tune in to your own internal navigation system. Peace.